Alex Answer here. It is April 20th, 2016. It's been a while since I've done a video. I want to talk with you today about a crisis in human consciousness and what it means for our future. Some would prefer to call it a constitutional crisis, but it is really a crisis in consciousness. When you have people outlawing, criminalizing living in your vehicle on private land, and when you have society looking the other way when it takes place. And this is going to have consequences for society, people in the society as time goes on, in ways that a lot of people have just not considered. There are people that are planning to get in their car and bug out when the you-know-what hits the fan, as if, there's just going to be an alarm, they're going to hear it, and they're going to jump down the fire pole. They're going to put on their protective hat with the right padding and everything. They're going to grab their bag, and they're just going to go there to that spot because they're the only person that's thought about that spot. And they're going to have all their needs met. And they don't need to worry. They'll get some guns. They'll get their own deer. And yet some of these people are willing to keep their mouths shut about people being victimized right here and now. And we're talking about people that are going off grid. Now here we are in 2016, and we're about 7 years past that period around the banker bailout situation where a lot of people began to lose their jobs and their homes. And it was also during this time period that a lot of people began to look at off-the-grid living in a more serious way, to be self-sufficient so they don't need the dollar. So they don't need to have a job to where they are in ownership of their own property and they have the resources that they need to grow their own food. This is a dream that a lot of people have. It's in our cellular memory. Many of our ancestors lived off the grid in some way, shape, or form. So it's in us as human beings. And we're living in a world where 90% are in the city, where BLM corruption is more of a topic now than ever. People are waking up that there is a massive land grab taking place. And they've made, in a lot of different ways, life comfortable for some people. They've made life comfortable for people in the city to a certain extent. And then for other people, in other situations, people have been trying to go their own way. And, I really liken it to a spiritual practice of being close to nature. It's not just doom and gloom when it comes to living off the grid. So I see this as a crisis in human consciousness, the general war on off-the-grid living. And the people involved in it, and the people keeping their mouths shut about this. The idea of people becoming criminals, being surveilled by criminals, because they want to live on the land. I don't believe this bullshit that the septic systems are helping maintain environmental integrity. In fact, there's some evidence to indicate that all these septic systems, some of them are actually contaminating the soil. It's bullshit to suggest that people living with compost toilets and alternative waste systems, that they are contaminating or harming the earth. That's disrespectful to all human beings that came before us. It's disrespectful to all one's ancestors and the ancestors of others. And so we have a crisis in consciousness. We have a crisis in common sense. We have people out there that don't realize they're helping create the world their children are going to have to live in. And so it does sadden me to see this happen and to see people allow it to happen. And I'm not going to hide from the truth, and I'm not going to dance around the truth, that is the truth. This isn't just something happening in Costilla County. This is something that is happening nationwide. There's a story about more RVs popping up in neighborhoods in Portland as the homeless population increases, not just locals that have lost their home, but people that have moved to Portland, buying the propaganda that it's a great place for young people to go and retire. So it's attracted all kinds, the have and have-nots. And so, I'm examining the situation in Portland and how it's getting worse and how grateful I am to be here. and not there. And I can see how if I was there now, things would be far more stressful because of the increased lack of space for parking your vehicle, your RV, or whatever. I had a teardrop camper homemade when I was there in 2015. Went back to Portland for a year, my hometown, and I was able to upgrade to the RV. And I saw what was happening to the city then, and I talked about it, and people were in denial about it, and there are less people in denial now. And so, they're doing a story on KGW, more RVs popping up in neighborhoods, and again, they're not dealing with solutions to homelessness. In Portland, one of the things that I talked about is providing people, especially older men that have work skills, building skills, a place to build, work on crafts, and a website designed by the city where they could set up their own user profile and they can sell their merchandise. Here we are in a world where you have prisoners, making jeans and making license plates so corporations can make money, but you have no real help for the homelessness. What you have is encouragement to apply for welfare. And this has not been said enough, and this has not been fully exposed. And people out there that are having this growing disdain for welfare recipients that they assume are homeless people, that they assume are off the gridders, they need to get their facts right. Now, for one thing, I make my own money working for a particular website and a few bucks coming from the YouTube AdSense. I do not collect welfare. I do not collect money from the state. However, there are some people that do. But there is a misunderstanding that some people have. Some people just don't realize these regulations are making off-the-grid living free, sustainable, against the law, a criminal act in some cases. Or in some cases, they try to take the land the person is staying on if they won't leave the land voluntarily. Okay. And what are people supposed to do? Apply for a handout in some way, shape, or form. Locally in Alamosa, the situation is they want people to fill up the beds at La Puente Homeless Shelter. And I suspect this is really about funding. I don't think somebody has to be a genius or a brainiac to figure that out, that it's about funding, getting more asses in the seat, getting more human beings in the beds. Not how do we help these people that have a few $1,000s that are being booted off their land, that just need to find a place, a plot where it's not illegal to live in your RV. Just a few years ago, it was legal to just live on the land. And a few permits here and there would keep the county at bay. And now, and like I said, it's not just this area. You start looking around at the new land use codes. This is all coming after the banker bailout fiasco. This is coming after a lot of people have lost their homes and more people have become homeless. This is coming at a time where people actually need those plots of land and those places to go to rest, to live in peace, without being regulated out of existence. I mean, seriously, how far away then is the breathing tax? Maybe after they drop the nukes and we start becoming accustomed to breathing with these masks. All seriousness, folks, this is not a good sign for consciousness, because there's going to come a time where people may be needing to leave their area and they're living in their vehicles. And, what are these cities going to look like then if everybody's forced back in the city, back in the grid, and it's outlawed to be anywhere in nature? Then you have all these people parking in public spaces near people's homes. That isn't good on anybody. That isn't good on the people that are homeless. And the people don't appreciate that are living in the neighborhoods that are having their parking spaces taken. No, I experienced what I experienced in Portland for a reason. And also hearing about what's happening down in California. What I think is not a wise decision right now with gas going up is for people just to be driving cross-country back and forth across the nation. We have the internet, we have Facebook, and I've done a lot of research, and I know Tennessee, Texas, Michigan, Virginia, I know some of those places have land that perhaps somebody can live on for cheap. You know what? You got to follow your heart. I am not drawn to those states. I think some of those places are going to be very, very dangerous. Just because they may leave you alone in certain counties or areas doesn't mean that it's a good area to reside in. Doesn't mean you're not breathing pesticides from a nearby ranch. And that is an area here in the San Luis Valley to be aware of. When someone is picking land, how far away is it from a large, big alfalfa field. And by the way, that's where the water is going in conjunction with the drought. It's the over-irrigation. It's the commercial farmers. It's the rich, wealthy ranchers. And that whole industry. It isn't a few newcomers taking a few gallons here and there for their own livelihood from a San Luis well. You know, these regulations, you know, must get a cistern, must get a well, must get a septic. These are things that I think will harm the environment as time goes on. More of this drilling, more of this plucking and injecting the earth instead of just living naturally on the earth without all this technology. It's a crisis in common sense. It's a crisis of the heart. It's a crisis of consciousness. I look at this town of Alamosa, and I'm not here to bash it, but just simply tell the truth. I look at the Google Earth of it, and I see a wasteland. I see a land that one day may regain its beauty, but I also sense an earth that has been hurt by the humans, both present and the past. And I feel in my heart as I stand next to the Rio Grande River, which also runs down to Costilla County. I feel in my heart the actions of man and the way that man has treated these waterways has and is affecting the human consciousness of the people. In Portland, I spoke of the same thing. I called the city of the wounded goddess. I spoke of the polluted river and the connection between lower human consciousness and a polluted river, polluted minds, greed. I've talked about a history of slavery in that region, human trafficking, prostitution, alcoholism, every vice you can imagine. And then you look at the new Portlandia that is being built today, the real Portlandia, and it's just a sicker, more modern version of the same old world. Some of us came to live in freedom in rural areas to save our sanity and to continue to develop our spirituality, to connect with our soul in what seems to be a fairly soulless world at times. And to see government policies from local to state to federal invoke new rules and regulations that are truly not constitutional, but they will say that they are constitutional, to prevent people from living off the grid that are lower income, to demand that they have $5,000 up front for a septic. This is inhumane. How many people are expected to have $5,000 up front or even $2,000 up front before they move into a new apartment? It's usually first and last month's rent, and of course being approved by the landlord, which of course comes with accepting a lord into your life, an archon, an authority figure, a controller, a regulator. Ladies and gentlemen, let me close here. We are at a crossroads in time. We are just several years after the last major banker bailout, and we are on the cusp of something else that is right around the corner. And I can have $2,000 cash or $1,000 cash, and in today's day and age, in 2016, not just be able to plop that down anywhere and safely know that I can live there without a $5,000 plus septic system, that I can live in my RV in peace without the regulators trespassing on the land to evict me, to take pictures of me or the vehicle, or to look for the vehicle. This is happening in 2016, and people have the tits, people have the balls to say that people are waking up. And I ask what they're waking up to. Another game show? Another Hot Pocket? Another dance on TV featuring Kim Kardashian's ass? Both naked and unnaked? What are people waking up to? The next iPhone app or model? The next World Wrestling video game? What are people waking up to? The new virtual reality headset? The new update on their Facebook? Which in many cases has replaced real human relationships with this mimicking? of a relationship? What have people woken up to? Because what I see are hundreds of people in one particular geographic area, many of them veterans that at one point said that they went out to fight for people's freedoms. I hope some of them are able to see beyond that at this point and the reality of the situation, that their own freedoms have been taken by the government that they served. And yet I see no legal support for these people, these lower income off-grid residents that can't hire a lawyer. And yet I see people act like they care about human rights. And I'm literally asking myself, how deep is this crisis in consciousness? Because it surely isn't just the local government. It's like nearly all of the 300 million Americans, or however many people live in this country. I documented a 65-year-old veteran, Vietnam veteran, being kicked off his land for no septic, and his home being too small, even though it was grandfathered in on the tax roll, built in 1999, and there was no media firestorm surrounding that. I mean, seriously, for your own well-being and your own safety, navigating the future in this matrix we live in, I want you to really think about what this means in terms of where consciousness is, that people will allow this to happen to other people, that nobody will get involved, no lawyers. And everyone will scream, that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal. And we're now here in 2016, we're documenting all this on YouTube. Kyle from the Last Bastards wrote a great analysis in the demonization of the off-grid homesteaders. And yet there is no ACLU, no legal support. No one higher up in the media on any level, no one in the media, left, right, alternative, other than myself. And then, of course, there were the people that later wrote stories about it, and then it grew, and Free Thought Project wrote about it, and Cop Block. But I got the story out there. I'm the one. I did it by myself. And despite that, I'm now parked back in the city, what some people consider homeless, living in my RV, knowing that it is considered illegal by the county officials in nearly all of the counties I'm in and surrounding me to live in your RV on your own land. And yet, because of my controversial nature and perhaps other things people may use against me, there's no safety net for someone like me. There's nothing but the streets. And yet you watch, and I appreciate. But holy fuck, man, do you see what I'm seeing here? If we're here now at this moment in 2016, when we actually could have reversed this, when people could have actually worked together to get the word out about what these counties are doing. Now that all this is being allowed, I mean, seriously, are they going to put the homeless people in the future in holding facilities, in special regions? Because at some point you're going to have more and more people entering the urban areas with nowhere else to go. And it's going to become a problem for everyone involved. There's not going to be enough food, water, and space for us all to be herded back into the rural reservations. What will come of that? What if the real forces that be, that truly control how things go, make sure there's a massive job loss that affects everyone at once to deliberately create a homeless situation? Meanwhile, the BLM gobbles up more land. There's more national monuments, leverage on the national debt that is, more national forests under BLM control, less places where people could just go and live off the grid. And because of the apathy of today, many of the off-the-gridders that are keeping their mouths shut, many of the tiny home enthusiasts, many of the people that say, well, if you just go along and pay all the permits, everything will be fine, without realizing what's happening here. You need permission to cough? Need permission what? To make food next? Need a permit to go to the bathroom? And again, at what point will the air we breathe be regulated? See, many of the off-the-gridders that have kept their mouths shut, oh, I'm just going to worry about myself and my girlfriend and my little world, and just look down at everybody else, they're going to find themselves, I'd say in a few years, especially if some of these areas that are currently off-grid are turned into BLM land, areas around the Rio Grande Ranchos, other areas in Costilla County, for example, a whole new rezoning that puts it back in the hands of the government. What will be then of the people already living on those properties? What about down in Taos, New Mexico, or other areas that could be rezoned and protected with people being given a certain amount of time to get the fuck out? It's been done before in a government where they'll take a farmer's property to make way for a freeway. It has been done before, and people are being booted off their land that they own now if they don't have $5,000 for a septic system. Again, how many people have $5,000 for moving costs for another apartment? They want people in the cities. So people should really take a look at where this is going. Let me know where you think this is going. I'm Alex Ansary, signing off now from Alamosa, Colorado, April 20th, 2016.